The hum of the city was a lullaby to me. From my perch atop the Zenith Tower, my office a glass-walled sanctuary, the sprawling metropolis spread out like a glittering tapestry. Below, the miniature cars crawled along the arteries of the city, each one a life, a story, oblivious to the quiet power I wielded from my vantage point. Tonight, the city lights seemed to twinkle a little brighter, a reflection of the anticipation bubbling within me. Tonight was a milestone 10 years. 10 years since I'd stood before Alistair, the old family vicar, and promised to cherish and honor her. 10 years with Vivian. A smile touched my lips. Vivian. The name itself was a melody, a soft whisper of elegance and grace. She was a vision, a woman sculpted from moonlight and dreams. Her laughter was like wind chimes, a delicate tinkling that could chase away the darkest shadows. Her presence filled a room, not with boisterous noise, but with a quiet magnetism that drew everyone in. And she was mine, or at least she was supposed to be. I glanced at the Patek Philippe on my wrist. Vivian was running late. Again. It wasn't unusual. She was a whirlwind of social engagements, a butterfly flitting from gala to fundraiser to art opening. Her calendar was a chaotic masterpiece of appointments and commitments. I usually didn't mind. Her social life was part of her charm, a testament to her vibrant personality. But tonight was different. Tonight was ours. I planned a surprise, a grand gesture to celebrate our decade together. A private jet was waiting on the tarmac, ready to whisk us away to Venice. I'd envisioned gondola rides under the Rialto Bridge, whispered secrets over candlelit dinners, lazy mornings spent exploring hidden alleyways. Venice, the city of romance, of whispered promises, of timeless beauty. It was the perfect backdrop for our anniversary. I swiveled my chair, turning away from the city lights to face the mahogany desk that dominated the room. A single, crimson rose lay nestled in a crystal vase, its velvety petals unfurling in the soft glow of the desk lamp. Beside it, a small, velvet box rested, its weight insignificant compared to the treasure it held within. A diamond, cut with meticulous precision, waiting to adorn Vivian's finger. I picked up the box, turning it over in my hands. The smooth, cool surface was a stark contrast to the sudden heat that prickled my palms. A strange unease had settled over me in recent weeks, a nagging feeling that something was off. Vivian had been distant, her laughter less frequent, her touch perfunctory. I dismissed it as stress, the pressures of her busy life. But the feeling persisted, a discordant note in the symphony of our life together. I'd finally succumbed to the gnawing suspicion and hired a private investigator. A foolish move, perhaps, driven by paranoia and insecurity. I told myself it was just a precaution, a way to put my mind at ease. But deep down, a dark premonition whispered that I wouldn't like what I found. My phone buzzed on the desk. A notification. It was from the investigator. A single word. Report. My breath hitched. The rose in the vase suddenly seemed to droop, its vibrant color fading into a dull crimson. The city lights outside no longer twinkled. They seemed to mock me, their brilliance a stark reminder of the darkness that was about to engulf me. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the phone. A part of me wanted to ignore it, to cling to the illusion of happiness, to pretend that everything was perfect. But another, colder part of me knew that I couldn't. The truth, whatever it might be, was waiting, and I had to face it. My fingers trembled as I picked up the phone. The screen illuminated, displaying a message with a single, stark link. I took a deep breath, the air thick and heavy in my lungs, and tapped the link. It redirected me to a secure, encrypted file. The loading bar seemed to crawl, each agonizing second stretching into an eternity. My heart pounded against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat echoing the dread that filled me. I closed my eyes briefly, bracing myself for whatever the report contained. When I opened them, the file was ready. The first image that flashed across the screen was a snapshot, candid and intimate. Vivian, her face flushed, her eyes half closed, locked in an embrace with a man I recognized instantly. Damien Sterling, my friend, my business associate, A wave of nausea washed over me. It wasn't just the infidelity itself. It was the casual betrayal, the sheer disregard for our history, for our supposed friendship, that cut like a shard of ice. I scrolled down, my fingers moving mechanically, as if detached from my own body. More images, different men, different locations. A swanky restaurant I'd taken Vivian to for her birthday. A secluded villa in Tuscany, where we'd celebrated our 5th anniversary. Even our own home, our bedroom, captured in stolen moments of intimacy with strangers. Each picture was a hammer blow, shattering the carefully constructed image of our life together. The report wasn't just pictures. It was a meticulously compiled dossier. Dates, times, locations, even snippets of conversations, all laid bare with cold, clinical precision. It detailed Vivian's numerous affairs, the men she'd shared her life with, the lies she'd spun with such effortless grace. It was a catalogue of betrayal, a testament to the depth of her deception. I felt a strange detachment, as if I were watching a play unfold, a tragedy starring characters I didn't recognize. The man in the pictures, the one whose life was being dissected and exposed, felt distant, almost unreal. It was as if this was happening to someone else. Not me. I continued to scroll, my gaze fixed on the screen, absorbing every detail, every nuance of her treachery. The report named names, described encounters, exposed secrets. It painted a portrait of Vivian that was utterly unrecognizable. The woman I loved, the woman I'd built my life with, was a phantom, a figment of my imagination. She was a stranger, a master manipulator who had woven a web of lies so intricate that I'd been completely ensnared. The room seemed to shrink, the city lights outside now blurred and distorted. The rose on my desk, the symbol of my love, my devotion, now seemed like a cruel joke. The diamond in the velvet box suddenly felt heavy, a burden I could no longer bear. I closed the laptop, the screen going dark, plunging the room into a deeper shade of gloom. The silence was deafening, broken only by the frantic pounding of my heart. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of what I'd just seen. 10 years. 10 years of lies, of deceit, of carefully orchestrated illusions. 10 years wasted on a woman who never truly existed. The anger I expected didn't come. Instead, I felt a profound sense of emptiness, a hollowness that seemed to stretch out before me like an endless abyss. I had been living a lie, a carefully crafted fantasy, and now the truth had shattered it into a million pieces. I was left with nothing but the fragments, sharp and jagged, cutting into my soul. The Venice trip was off. The surprise, the grand gesture, now seemed absurd, a pathetic attempt to salvage something that was already broken beyond repair. I wouldn't confront Vivian. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of a dramatic scene, of tears and recriminations. My revenge wouldn't be emotional. It would be something far more calculated, far more devastating. It would be a slow, methodical dismantling of her world, a quiet unraveling of the lies she'd so carefully constructed. And I would be the architect of her downfall. The first tendrils of my plan began to take shape in the sterile quiet of my office. My anger, though muted, was a potent fuel, a cold fire that burned with a steady intensity. I wouldn't stoop to Vivian's level. There would be no messy confrontations, no public spectacles. My revenge would be subtle, insidious, a poison that would seep into the very fabric of her existence. I started with Damian Sterling. He was a rising star in the financial world, his company poised on the brink of a major breakthrough. I had, in fact, been instrumental in his success, funneling investments his way, leveraging my influence to open doors for him. Now, I would use that same influence to destroy him. I began subtly shifting my company's investments, diverting funds away from Sterling's ventures. I leaked information to competitors, whispered doubts about his financial stability to key investors. I orchestrated a slow, steady erosion of his credibility, a gradual undermining of his foundation. He wouldn't collapse overnight. That would be too merciful. I wanted him to feel the ground crumble beneath his feet, to experience the agonizing descent into ruin. The next target was closer to home, a thorn that pricked at my conscience with every calculated move. Marcus, my own business partner, my supposed friend. He was a jovial man, always quick with a joke, a backslapper with an easy charm. He'd been my confidant, my sounding board, the one person I thought I could trust implicitly. Yet, there he was in the investigator's report, grinning at the camera as he held Vivian close. Dealing with Marcus required a different approach. He was too deeply entrenched in my company, his ties too strong to sever abruptly. I began by isolating him, subtly excluding him from key decisions, undermining his authority in the eyes of our employees. I planted seeds of doubt, hinting at his incompetence, his lack of vision. I watched as his confidence eroded, his jovial facade cracking under the pressure. The dismantling of Damien and Marcus was just the beginning. The investigator's report had revealed a network of betrayal, a tangled web of infidelity that extended far beyond my immediate circle. There were other men, some mere acquaintances, others I considered friends. Each one had played a part in Vivian's elaborate charade, each one complicit in her deceit. And each one would pay. I worked late into the night, the city lights my only companion. My office became a war room, the desk littered with files, reports, and financial statements. I was a general plotting his campaign, each move calculated, each strategy designed to inflict maximum damage. There was a strange satisfaction in the meticulous planning, in the cold, clinical execution of my revenge. It was a way to regain control, to assert my dominance over a situation that had left me feeling powerless and humiliated. As the weeks passed, I felt a sense of purpose, a grim determination that fueled my every action. I was no longer the heartbroken husband, the victim of betrayal. I was the architect of my own justice, the dispenser of retribution. And I would not rest until Vivian and her accomplices had paid the price for their treachery. My plan extended beyond the men in Vivian's life. They were merely pawns in a larger game, the first casualties in a war against the entire edifice of our social circle. These people, our friends, our colleagues, had turned a blind eye to Vivian's indiscretions, their silence a tacit endorsement of her behavior. They had dined at our table, laughed with us, shared our lives, all the while knowing the truth, whispering behind our backs. Their complicity was as unforgivable as Vivian's betrayal. I decided to strike at the heart of their world, their reputation. These were people who lived for appearances, whose social standing was their most valuable currency. I would devalue that currency, expose their hypocrisy, and watch as their carefully constructed facades crumbled. My first move was a bold one. I organized a lavish charity gala, ostensibly to benefit a cause close to Vivian's heart. I spared no expense, ensuring that the event was the talk of the town. I invited everyone, our friends, our colleagues, the entire social circle that had enabled Vivian's deceit. They came in droves, dressed in their finest attire, their smiles plastered on, oblivious to the trap that awaited them. The highlight of the evening was my speech. I stood on the stage, the spotlight illuminating me, the expectant faces of the audience turned towards me. I began by extolling Vivian's virtues, her generosity, her dedication to the cause. Then, I subtly shifted the narrative, weaving in anecdotes that hinted at her open-mindedness, her unconventional approach to relationships. I spoke of her many friends, her diverse interests, her unwavering support for those she cared about. My words were carefully chosen, veiled barbs disguised as compliments. I never explicitly mentioned infidelity, never uttered a word of accusation. But the implication was clear, hanging heavy in the air. I watched as the smiles faltered, the eyes widened in surprise, the whispers started like a ripple through the crowd. The gala was a resounding success, raising a significant amount for the charity. But the real success was the seed of doubt I had planted, the suspicion that now lingered in the eyes of our friends. The whispers continued long after the event, spreading like wildfire through the social circles. Vivian, once the darling of society, now found herself the subject of gossip, her reputation tarnished by my carefully orchestrated innuendo. The gala was just the beginning. I had other plans in motion, subtler strategies designed to chip away at the foundations of their world. I anonymously funded a small, but influential gossip blog, feeding it tidbits of information about Vivian's affairs, her lover's financial troubles, the hypocrisy of their seemingly perfect lives. The blog became a platform for exposing the secrets of our social circle, a digital whispering gallery where reputations were dissected and destroyed. I watched it all unfold from a distance, a silent observer of the chaos I had unleashed. The social events that Vivian once thrived on became minefields of awkward encounters and veiled insults. Friends distanced themselves, their loyalty tested by the whispers and rumors. The once impenetrable walls of their social circle began to crumble, the foundations weakened by suspicion and mistrust. Vivian, sensing the shift in the social climate, tried to salvage her reputation. She organized a couples retreat, inviting our closest friends to a weekend getaway, hoping to reassert her dominance, to quell the rumors with a show of unity. I accepted the invitation, of course. It was the perfect opportunity to further my plan, to tighten the screws, to watch as her world continued to unravel. The retreat was held at a secluded lakeside resort, a picturesque setting designed to foster intimacy and camaraderie. Vivian, ever the gracious hostess, flitted from guest to guest, her smile strained, her eyes betraying a hint of desperation. I watched her, a detached observer, noting the subtle tremors in her voice, the forced gaiety in her laughter. She was a performer on a stage, desperately trying to hold the audience's attention as the scenery around her began to collapse. I played my part to perfection, the devoted husband, the concerned friend. I offered words of support, expressed my unwavering faith in Vivian, subtly deflecting any suspicion that might fall upon me. I was a wolf in sheep's clothing, a predator disguised as a protector. The retreat was a carefully orchestrated facade, a desperate attempt to maintain the illusion of normalcy. But beneath the surface, the tension was palpable. The whispers continued, the glances exchanged, the forced smiles failing to mask the underlying unease. The once cohesive group was now fractured, divided by suspicion and mistrust. I seized the opportunity to further my plan. I orchestrated a series of accidental revelations, carefully planted seeds of doubt that would blossom into full-blown crises. A misplaced phone revealed a compromising text message, a drunken confession overheard in the hallway, a misplaced photograph discovered in a suitcase. Each incident was a calculated strike, designed to expose the cracks in their relationships, to shatter the illusion of their perfect lives. The first to crumble was Amelia, Vivian's closest confidant. Her husband, a successful lawyer, had been one of Vivian's lovers, a fact that was revealed through a series of seemingly innocuous text messages discovered on Amelia's phone. The confrontation was swift and brutal, the carefully constructed facade of their marriage shattered in a single, explosive moment. The next to fall was Charles, a renowned surgeon, whose affair with Vivian had been a poorly kept secret. His wife, a socialite known for her impeccable manners, overheard a drunken confession during a late-night gathering by the lake. The revelation was met with icy silence, followed by a swift and decisive separation. One by one, the couples in our social circle began to unravel. Their secrets, once hidden behind a veil of respectability, were now exposed, laid bare for all to see. The retreat, designed to be a celebration of their friendships, became a crucible of betrayal and recrimination. Vivian, witnessing the implosion of her carefully constructed world, became increasingly frantic. Her attempts to control the narrative, to quell the rising tide of suspicion, grew more desperate. But the damage was done. The seeds of doubt had been sown, and they were now bearing fruit. I watched it all unfold, a silent puppeteer pulling the strings. The retreat was a masterpiece of manipulation, a carefully orchestrated symphony of destruction. I had taken their world, their relationships, their carefully cultivated image, and shattered it into a million pieces. And I was just getting started. The retreat ended in a flurry of hastily packed bags and strained goodbyes. The once vibrant group, now fractured and disillusioned, dispersed back into the city, carrying with them the weight of their shattered illusions. Vivian, her face pale, her eyes red-rimmed, watched them go, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. I lingered, observing her with a detached curiosity. The once confident socialite was now a shadow of her former self, her spirit broken, her energy depleted. The mask of composure she had worn for so long had finally slipped, revealing the vulnerability beneath. I approached her, my footsteps echoing in the sudden silence of the deserted resort. She looked up, her eyes meeting mine with a mixture of fear and defiance. "You did this?" she said, her voice hoarse, barely a whisper. I didn't deny it. There was no need. The evidence of my handiwork was all around us, in the shattered relationships, the ruined reputations, the lingering atmosphere of suspicion and mistrust. "Why?" she asked, her voice cracking. "Why are you doing this to me? Why?" I repeated, a hint of amusement in my voice. "Vivian, you betrayed me. You lied to me. You made a mockery of our marriage, of our life together. You think a few tears and apologies will erase that?" "I made mistakes," she said, her voice pleading.
I'm sorry.
"I never meant to hurt you."
Sorry.
I scoffed. "Your mistakes involved a significant portion of our social circle. They knew Vivian. They all knew and said nothing. They are complicit in your deceit." "They're our friends," she protested. "They didn't want to hurt us. They didn't want to jeopardize their own comfortable little lives." I corrected her. "They were happy to turn a blind eye to your indiscretions, as long as it didn't disrupt their own carefully curated existence." Vivian looked away, her gaze fixed on the placid surface of the lake. The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken accusations and recriminations. "You've taken everything from me?" she finally said, her voice barely audible. "Not yet," I replied, my voice cold, devoid of emotion. "But I will." I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, alone in the wreckage of her own making. The retreat had been a turning point, a decisive victory in my campaign of revenge. I had exposed the truth, shattered the illusions, and sown the seeds of discord. Now it was time to reap the harvest. The aftermath of the retreat was a whirlwind of gossip and speculation. The once tightly knit social circle was now a fragmented landscape of suspicion and mistrust. Friendships dissolved, alliances shifted, and reputations were irrevocably tarnished. Vivian, once the queen bee of their social hive, found herself ostracized, shunned by the very people who had once fawned over her. The gossip blog I had anonymously funded continued to churn out salacious details, fueling the flames of scandal. Every indiscretion, every whispered secret, was amplified and dissected, laid bare for public consumption. The blog became a digital battleground, a forum for anonymous accusations and veiled threats. Reputations were destroyed with a few keystrokes, careers ruined with a single, well-placed rumor. I watched it all unfold from a distance, a silent observer of the chaos I had created. The social events that had once been the cornerstone of their lives became minefields of awkward encounters and veiled insults. The once familiar faces now wore masks of suspicion, their smiles strained, their eyes filled with a mixture of fear and resentment. Vivian's attempts to salvage her reputation proved futile. Her denials were met with skepticism, her apologies dismissed as insincere. The more she tried to defend herself, the deeper she sank into the mire of scandal. Her once glittering social life was reduced to a series of humiliating encounters, her every move scrutinized, her every word dissected. The men in her life fared no better. Damian Sterling's company, once a rising star in the financial world, was now teetering on the brink of collapse. Investors had withdrawn their support, his reputation tarnished by the rumors of his involvement with Vivian. He was a pariah in the business world, his once promising career now in ruins. Marcus, my former business partner, had been forced to resign from the company, his authority undermined, his credibility shattered. He was a shadow of his former self, his jovial facade replaced by a mask of bitterness and resentment. He had lost his position, his reputation, and his friendship with me, all because of his involvement with Vivian. The others, the lesser players in Vivian's game of deception, also suffered the consequences of their actions. Their careers faltered, their relationships dissolved, their reputations tarnished. They were collateral damage in my war against Vivian, casualties caught in the crossfire of my revenge. I felt no remorse, no pity for their plight. They had made their choices, and now they were paying the price. They had been complicit in Vivian's deceit, their silence a tacit endorsement of her behavior. They had betrayed my trust, violated the sanctity of our friendship, and now they were reaping the whirlwind. As the weeks turned into months, the social landscape continued to shift. The old guard, the ones who had turned a blind eye to Vivian's indiscretions, were replaced by a new breed, eager to distance themselves from the scandal, to establish their own moral authority. The old alliances were broken, the old hierarchies overturned. The world that Vivian had once ruled was now a distant memory, a faded photograph of a bygone era. Vivian, isolated and increasingly desperate, made a last-ditch attempt to regain control. She reached out to me, not with apologies or pleas for forgiveness, but with a proposition. She wanted to meet, to negotiate a truce, to find a way to end the war that was destroying both of our lives. I agreed to meet her, not out of any lingering affection or desire for reconciliation, but out of curiosity. I wanted to see how far she would go, how low she would stoop, to salvage what remained of her shattered world. We met at a neutral location, a quiet cafe tucked away in a forgotten corner of the city. She arrived alone, her face pale, her eyes shadowed with exhaustion. The once vibrant socialite was now a ghost of her former self, her spirit broken, her confidence shattered. She began by offering a confession, a detailed account of her affairs, her motivations, her regrets. She spoke of her loneliness, her insecurity, her desperate need for validation. She painted herself as a victim, a woman driven to extremes by her own emotional fragility. I listened impassively, my face betraying no emotion. Her words were meaningless, empty gestures designed to elicit sympathy, to manipulate me into forgiveness. I had heard it all before, the same excuses, the same justifications, the same crocodile tears. She then moved on to the proposition. She offered me a deal, a compromise that would allow us both to move on with our lives. She would agree to a quiet divorce, with no contest over assets or custody of the children. In return, I would cease my campaign of revenge, withdraw my support from the gossip blog, and allow her to rebuild her life in peace. I considered her offer, weighing the pros and cons. On the one hand, it would bring an end to the conflict, allowing me to focus on my own life, my own future. On the other hand, it would leave Vivian with a measure of dignity, a chance to escape the consequences of her actions. I looked at her, her face etched with desperation, her eyes pleading for mercy. A flicker of something akin to pity stirred within me, but I quickly suppressed it. Pity was a weakness, an indulgence I could not afford. "No," I said, my voice firm, unwavering. "Your offer is unacceptable." Vivian's face crumpled, her last hope extinguished. She looked at me with a mixture of hatred and despair, her eyes filled with a venomous rage. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "You'll never be happy. You'll always be alone." I smiled, a cold, humorless smile. "Happiness is not a priority for me, Vivian. Justice is. And you will have justice, even if it destroys us both." I stood up and walked away, leaving her sitting there, alone in the wreckage of her own making. Her proposition had been a desperate gamble, a last-ditch attempt to escape the consequences of her actions. But I was not a man to be swayed by pleas or threats. I had made my decision, and I would see it through to the end. Vivian's threat, though born of desperation, sparked a new wave of unease within me. Had I gone too far? Was my relentless pursuit of revenge consuming me, transforming me into the very monster I sought to destroy? The question lingered, a nagging doubt that gnawed at the edges of my resolve. I sought solace in my work, immersing myself in the intricate details of my business empire. I expanded my investments, forged new alliances, and consolidated my power. The success was intoxicating, a tangible reminder of my own strength, my own resilience. Yet, even as I climbed the ladder of success, the shadow of Vivian's betrayal continued to haunt me. I found myself replaying the events of the past months, dissecting every interaction, every conversation, searching for clues that I had missed, signs that I had been blind to. The doubt grew, an insidious weed that threatened to choke the life out of my carefully cultivated composure. Was I truly the victim in this story, or had I become the villain, driven by a thirst for revenge that knew no bounds? I sought answers in the faces of those around me, my employees, my colleagues, the new acquaintances who filled the void left by my former friends. They saw me as a success, a man of power and influence, a leader to be admired and respected. Their admiration was a balm to my wounded ego, a validation of my own self-worth. Yet, even as I basked in their approval, a nagging voice whispered in the back of my mind. Was their admiration genuine, or was it merely a reflection of my own carefully cultivated image? Were they drawn to my power, my wealth, or to the man I truly was? The questions haunted me, casting a shadow over my every achievement. I found myself withdrawing from social interactions, preferring the solitude of my office to the superficiality of cocktail parties and charity galas. The world outside seemed increasingly distant, a stage on which actors played their assigned roles, their smiles and laughter masking a deep-seated emptiness. I sought refuge in the familiar comfort of my penthouse apartment, the luxurious surroundings a testament to my success. Yet, even within the confines of my own home, I could not escape the ghosts of the past. Vivian's presence lingered, a faint perfume in the air, a forgotten scarf draped over a chair, a whispered memory in the silence of the night. I tried to erase her, to purge her from my thoughts, my memories, my life. I replaced her belongings with new acquisitions, redecorated the apartment, filled the silence with music and the company of carefully chosen companions. Yet, she remained, a persistent phantom that refused to be exorcised. The doubt grew stronger, feeding on my isolation, my introspection. Was I truly happy? Was my relentless pursuit of revenge worth the cost? The questions lingered, unanswered, a constant reminder of the uncertainty that lay at the heart of my existence. One evening, as I sat alone in my office, staring out at the glittering cityscape, an unexpected visitor arrived. It was Eleanor, Vivian's mother. I hadn't seen her since the retreat, and her presence now, unannounced and uninvited, filled me with a sense of foreboding. She was a formidable woman, Eleanor, with a sharp wit and an even sharper tongue. She had always been a staunch defender of Vivian, her love for her daughter unwavering, even in the face of her indiscretions. She wasted no time on pleasantries, launching into a scathing attack on my character, my actions, my very being. She accused me of cruelty, of vindictiveness, of destroying her daughter's life for the sake of my own wounded pride. "You've taken everything from her," she spat, her voice trembling with rage. "Her friends, her reputation, her dignity. What more do you want?" "Justice," I replied, my voice calm, measured. "She betrayed me, Eleanor. She lied to me, deceived me, made a mockery of our marriage. She deserves to face the consequences of her actions." "Consequences?" she scoffed. "You call this justice? You've ruined her life, Arthur. You've turned her into a pariah, a social outcast. She has nothing left." "She has what she deserves," I retorted. "She made her choices, and now she must live with them." Eleanor's eyes blazed with fury. "You're a monster," she hissed. "A cold, heartless monster. You'll never know what it means to love someone, to truly care for another human being." Her words struck a nerve, piercing the armor of indifference I had so carefully constructed. Was she right? Had my pursuit of revenge blinded me to the human cost, the pain and suffering I had inflicted on Vivian and those around her? A flicker of doubt, a momentary lapse in my resolve, crossed my face. Eleanor saw it, and she pressed her advantage. "You're alone, Arthur," she said, her voice softening. "You've pushed everyone away, isolated yourself in your ivory tower, You think your wealth, your power will bring you happiness? You're wrong. It will only bring you more loneliness, more emptiness. Her words resonated with a truth I had been trying to ignore. Despite my outward success, my carefully cultivated image of power and control, I was alone. The friends I had once cherished were gone, replaced by sycophants and opportunists. The love I had once shared with Vivian was a distant memory, a faded photograph of a bygone era. Eleanor's visit was a wake-up call, a stark reminder of the human cost of my revenge. Her words, though harsh, carried a kernel of truth that I could no longer ignore. Was I truly happy? Was my relentless pursuit of justice worth the price I was paying? The questions lingered, unanswered, a heavy weight on my soul. I had achieved my goal, destroyed Vivian's world, exposed her betrayal, and punished those who had enabled her. But at what cost? Had I sacrificed my own happiness, my own humanity, in the process? The doubt grew stronger, a persistent voice that whispered in the silence of my lonely nights. Was I the victor in this war, or had I become the ultimate casualty, a prisoner of my own bitterness and resentment?